Namaste, welcome back to Mindful Serenity Yoga, or Waking Up in a Busy World. We're going to continue with the questions and the answers, and I have already pulled a question from the jar and answered it on a previous video, but made the mistake of deleting it, so I'm going to answer the same question again, and I will begin my timer. And the question was, let me see if I can read it exactly from here. What is the most damaging view we can hold as human beings, and how does it impact us in the world? What is the most damaging view we can hold as human beings, and how does it impact us in the world? I'm going to take a breath. The most damaging view we can have as human beings, I believe, is the fact, or not the fact, the illusion that we are separate. If we view the world through this idea that we are separate entities, in separate bodies, with separate minds, separated by our genders, our races, our nationalities, our economics, our ideologies, politics, religiosity, then we're going to have a whole crap load of problems. And so is the world, if they're most of us, because most of us, I believe, actually have that illusion. I am just now trying to decondition myself from that idea that I'm a separate human being. And it's a process, let me tell you. We've developed this view because of our lifelong conditioning. We are told by society, by the groups that we're involved in, our families. We also inherit, I believe, genetically, the belief systems of our ancestors. Somehow that's passed on to us, and Jung called it the collective unconscious. We ascribe to this because we were conditioned to, that we are separate entities. If I see myself as a separate little me in this body, with this mind and personality, with the roles I play, the things I own, and whatnot, I'm going to be very protective of it, because in us, as well as this view, this wrong view, I'll say, of ourselves as separate, we have an innate and primal instinct to survive, do we not? All beings on this planet, be they human, sentient or non-sentient, have this drive to survive. And if we have this drive to survive, but we see ourselves as separate entities, we're always going to be on the lookout for attack, always going to be needing to defend ourselves against the others out there. And those others do not have to be lions on the Serengeti Plains. They can be our neighbors, they can be the people we work with, they can be our own family members. They can be groups of people who differ in belief systems and ideologies, different religions, different races, different nationalities, that we somehow feel are at a risk of attacking us. So we develop not only borders, imaginary borders around ourselves based on our body lines and our different belief systems or whatever we used to separate with, but we also developed build around us a need for protection. So we become defensive. We become very weary of the others out there. I make a distinction between me and them, and there's always a them, and we really cannot define who the they are in the world, right? But we all use that. They did this, and they say that, and whoever the they are. But we were really big on making these distinctions between me and them, between us as separate little entities and the world as well. So by seeing ourselves and viewing the world through these eyes of separation, through these eyes of needing to protect this little entity, or these collection of entities that believe the same thing, or look the same way, or act the same way, from the other entities out there that are different, we're always going to be defensive. We're always going to be hyper-vigilant, ready, feeling vulnerable and unsafe and insecure. Fear, I believe, is the biggest component, the biggest emotional experience we have when we have this illusion that we are separate, when we are looking at the world through these separate eyes. And that fear within us is going to color the world as well. It's going to make it appear to be a very dangerous and hostile place. Because naturally, the environment we're in, which is just an extension of life, is constantly changing. It is unpredictable. It never stays the same. It comes and it goes. So witnessing that world do that through eyes of separation is going to make us feel even more vulnerable, more defensive. And it is our need for defense that actually leads to attacking. This leads to the broader issues of discrimination and bigotry and war and social inequality and, the unequal distribution of wealth. So this idea of being separate, this view, this way we look at the world through eyes of being separate, is so damaging to the world at large. And it's damaging to us because we don't have time to rest in ourselves. We become so busy doing, trying to accomplish in order to survive, trying to compete, because as separate entities, we follow Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest, that has been ingrained into us too and part of our conditioning. So we're always competing with one another to get ahead, feeling that there's only so much to go around, and we all have to fight and attack for it. So that is so damaging to us. It's exhausting. We can never rest. We're just so busy doing, claiming, gaining, attaining, and averting, pushing away that which we think has the potential of harming us, even if it is another person in the bodily form. We also, with this idea of separation, I tend to manipulate the environment so that it suits us and allows us to survive without considering what it's doing to the entire planet and, leading to the extinction of other species just so that we can continue surviving. So it does damage to the world, and it does damage to our peace of mind. How can we be peaceful when we're always fighting to survive as separate entities? When we're so, and when our survival doesn't just mean the physical survival, it can also be the psychosocial survival. So as a separate entity, I have this innate desire in me to survive as this idea of me. So that fighting for this idea of me is making sure that my beliefs are promoted and my beliefs are validated, and I have all the things I need to keep this image of me alive in my head and alive in the heads of other individuals. So it's just a constant fight for struggle for survival that one experiences with this wrong view of separation. We are not separate, and if we do the work like I'm trying to do, and you can find, this type of dogma or teachings in things like A Course in Miracles or Buddhist ideology or Hindu philosophies, and so many things that point to the idea that we are not. When we get rid of this idea of the self, the little self, the ego, we come to see that we are actually just one life force being expressed in many different ways, right? It's all the same life force. There is no separation between me and my brother, other than the physical body. When the physical body dies, we're all one, right? We're all back to the source again. Whatever you view that source as. I call it God, I call it, that higher plane. So when we have this idea of separation, we cause a lot of damage to ourselves and a lot of damage to the world. And the goal, I think, for a lot of spiritual practices is to get beyond that idea of separation, the non-self, to that spaciousness that we all share, to that connection that we all share. And we can do that through loving kindness and compassion and trying to see beyond the borders that are apparently around us and other beings to the universal life force. Same force in me beats the heart of the person next to me. The same force that that breathes through me, is breathed from the tree. We're all connected. It's all one big force. And Darwin, I believe, was wrong in his ideation that it's all about competing and fighting for survival. I believe we survive through cooperation, and we can use the cells in the human body as an example of that. Trillions of cells, but they all work together to ensure your survival. If they didn't, you wouldn't be alive right now. So let's look at that and try to put away our idea that we're separate, and not beat ourselves up for it, because it has been conditioned and programmed into us, but to realize that it has been, and start removing the beliefs and conditioning that have caused us this very erroneous way of viewing the world, and see instead how we're all united and connected with this wonderful process of life in front of us. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that helps. As you can see, my time is up. Namaste.